Hi, I'm your son American Chinese in here with another episode of Dark Theory USA. I'm with you guys to talk about the tariffs that President Trump brought to the table and applied like 2 days ago. And it's gonna start running 9th April, I think, in next 4 days. And look, guys, I know that everyone's panicking. They think we're going to go to another recession and the market is going to crash. And there are a lot of uncertainties, to be honest with you. And of course, you see Democrats and those people who are against Trump, they're going to just talk about negative stuff. And those people who are Trump supporter, the other Trump supporter, they're going to just say good things about that. I'm here to talk about, listen, if we take the emotion out of the table and just logically look at it, it's very good. Not only it's good, even if it is bad, it is necessary. Let's put it that way. So let's say even like surgery is bad because it's a lot of bleeding in that, but sometimes it's necessary, and it is necessary. And I think there are many good outcomes that come out of it if it is applied properly, but also on the same note, we have to remember it can be dangerous if we are reckless with that. So I'm going to talk about all the danger possibilities that we're going to have if it's not employed properly, and also about the good aspect of it, and more importantly, not only good aspect of it, but also why it is necessary, and we had to do it, and sooner was the better. You know, David Smith, one of the commentator and comedian, my favorite one, that I really admire him for everything that he has been doing regard to the war. And basically the first time that I saw him was on Joe Rogan's podcast a few years ago when he was talking with the Yemen and what President Obama did to Yemenis people. And I was really shocked. I said, man, I cannot believe that this man is literally talking those stuff. Like, he's so brave. Like don't you know that you don't talk about those stuff, especially about the Obama? But he said that without being fearful. Actually, he was the first libertarian that I saw that he was that courageous, that brave. And I started to follow him. After that, I said, like, he's anti-war. He's a real good human being. And besides that, he's a funny, he's a smart, he's really good patriot. And yeah, I started to follow him and saw that what he's doing. And I'm really supporter of David Smith. And basically, I'm going to say, as a Republican, conservative Republican, I would say I have more things in common with the a libertarian like David Smith than so many of these Republicans, especially the warmongers one. So I'm grateful for what he has been doing, especially me as a Muslim who was born in Middle East, seeing somebody who there is no benefit for him, because most of the people on Democrats, like this Suicide Squad, this Ilhan Omar AOC thing, I mean, they are looking for anything that could blame on Trump, you know, like what I'm saying. So even though sometimes they say good things about the Middle East, like they are stopping Republicans from doing something wrong, it's not clear to me the intentions are healthy, because I feel like they are doing it just because they have to. Like, whatever Trump does is wrong, so we have to attack them. But David Smith is not the case. Like, if Trump does something good, he supports him. If he does something wrong, he criticizes him. So he's more genuine. Like, I support somebody like David Smith way more than others, because others, their benefit is to criticize Trump no matter what he does. So because they don't have genuine intention, so no matter what direction it goes, they're gonna blame on Trump. But when you have you already know that what you're talking about that, and you already have clear purposes, what happens is, like, okay, you say, I don't care who does that. If it is a good policy, I support it. And that's a very good thing about the David Smith that I saw that. So anyway, so he was talking about the Trump's tariff, and I think that was very informative. And I want to react to a couple of the stuff that he said. And the reason that I'm using, besides that I'm big fan of David Smith, but also I think the way that he laid out was very good. It was not biased, it was unbiased. It wasn't biased like Democrats on left wing or right wingers like a Fox News right now. Few days ago, they said, oh, what about retirement plans? What about 401k? Oh, Biden is crashing the economy, blah, blah, blah. And now they're saying, we don't care about our retirement plan, 401k. Oh, we don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, you see, like, they're not genuine. Like, if it happens by a political opponent, it's end of the world. But if it happens by them, it is just a mosquito bite. And vice versa. The Democrats shut up whenever... what was that, Dow? The market was crashing under Biden, and they were quiet. Oh, it happens, be patient. And just 48 hours after Trump applied those tariffs on the Liberation Day, and now everyone is panicking. Bro, I'm saying panicking both times, criticize on both times. If you were patient in one time, you have to be patient on this. Fox News wasn't patient when economy market was crashing on the Biden time. Now they are too patient, and vice versa. But I think people like David Smith are necessary so we won't get into this political trap. Like, oh, if you're on this side, you won't criticize if you're president or something. And then I will tell you my opinion about that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I'm Dave Smith. I'm rolling solo for this episode, and I will start by saying I apologize. I know our schedule's been messed up. I would say, like, essentially, I'm not saying this is like a literal definition, but what economics is the study of human action with regard to improving life when scarcity is involved. And that's essentially what economics is. It's like it's human beings acting for a desired end, for an outcome that they wish to pursue when there is scarcity involved.
So basically, he tries to lay out the economic in a very with a simple example to say, like, let's see what basically economic is. So he simplified, and he said that the reason that I'm simplifying to understand the concept of economics. So after that, when of course it is more complicated than that, but we can apply the same concept. It's very necessary. What he said, I totally agree with him. And the reason that I do is like because in math, in physics, in chemistry, in science, in everything, even in drawing, if you learn the basic tactics and technique or understand the basic concept of something, then later on it's just like a foundation of building. If you have good foundation, no matter how far you go up, how many layers you put into it, it's okay because you have the good foundation. That's why, like, those people that you see when in their childhood they had a good math professor, that math teacher, you see all the way it shaped their major even later on in the university because they had a good math teacher, so they got good in math, and they got interested because they got confident because they were getting good grades, and others got impressed, so they kept going, and afterward you see they were so good that even they didn't need a professor in a school in a university to teach them. They could learn by themselves. They could self-teach themselves by just reading the book, and it's all coming from the foundation. Foundation is very important. So he talks about the foundation of the economy, and then he says basically, look, economic means basically what we do with the limited resources in order to improve our lives. You know what I'm saying? And he brings the example, for example, there is no business in oxygen because there's infinite number of oxygen out there. And he said, yeah, of course, like there are some elements to it, like trees making oxygen. But besides that, like we are not working to create oxygen. It's already there. That's why there's no business for that. So there's business in gold because there are not a lot of golds. And with the gold, you can have the jewelry. It can look good. It can be flashy or stuff. So, or for example, wood or anything that is limited, and we can use it to improve our life or for our goal. So that's called the business. So he gives a definition of.
Now, the scarcity component is important because if you don't have that, it's really outside of the realm of economics. The example I like to use is like oxygen. Oxygen is just not an economic good because there's no scarcity in it. And I mean, maybe technically speaking, there might be a limit to the amount of being alive, and there's never been a human being that can make a pencil. There's no one person who can do it.
Also, he brings an example. He says it hasn't been in the history of humankind that something as simple as pencil could be made by a human, which is true. Like in order to make a graphite, he says you need a machinery to get the graphite underground and then cut the wood and somehow put a eraser on the back of the pen. So when you see like something as simple as pencil couldn't be done by one person, even if that person lived for 10,000 years. Basically, it's true, because in order to do that, first you need to know engineering, to know the machinery, and then you create the electricity, and then make the machine, and then drill into the ground, and then get the graphic. So each different aspect of making pencil takes basically different level of expertise, right? So you have to be expert in each step. And he's saying the reason that quality of our life is very better because everyone focuses on very narrow, deep branch of the science or knowledge and skills, so he can share it with others. So you don't need to go all the way into one aspect of chemistry. I already went there. You can go in all the way into astrology, or I don't know, like engineering or math, right? So you don't need to do what I did. So basically we don't need to reinvent the wheel from the beginning. I make the wheel. I go all the way to make the best wheel. You go to make the best steering wheel, and somebody else for the pedals or the engineer or the motor, you know what I'm saying? So each one goes all the way deep into one aspect of life, like one skill, and get the best out of it. I come give it you with a very cheaper price because I only do one part, you do the other part. Because so this collaboration makes quality of life increases for everybody who is living on the planet.
Now, you might think to yourself, I think Tom Wood said this once when he was describing it, he goes, well, you might think to yourself, well, that's not true. You know, my uncle works at the pencil factory and he can make lots of pencils. But the point is that if when Milton Friedman's talking about it, and he goes, okay, so this is a pencil. Okay, so here's the point, which is, a lot of people think it's lead, but it's actually made of graphite. Graphite is in the ground. In order to get graphite out of the ground, you need this like machinery. In order to have this machinery, you need there are so many steps when you actually think about it that you need to figure out how to mine for these things. You need to build the machinery that's going to go into it. You need to build, there's so much knowledge. And this is we are only dealing with the graphite. We haven't even gotten to the wood. In order to produce the wood, in order to produce the little rubber eraser at the end, okay, you need this whole process to leveling up. But this is very basically how economies start and grow. And how, you know what I'm saying? How they start at a very primitive level and then grow into what is a modern economy. It's from different people having their different levels of expertise and everybody trading with each other. Now, of course, back to my primitive example, right? And this is where, I think everybody kind of knows this on some level, but this is where currency comes in. Is okay, it's one thing when you're trading, my example of where you're trading with your neighbor, log cabins for cattle or whatever. You can make these any example you want. One guy's really good at building chairs, the other guy is really good at fixing roofs or whatever. Now, that works really well if your neighbor needs a chair and you need your roof fixed. But sometimes, your neighbor needs a chair and you need something to eat. And he's like, well, I can't fix it. And then you would have to go find someone who has food and needs a chair. Whereas if you have currency, you don't need to worry about that because you can just give that person currency, which represents kind of like a unit of your value. They can take that and go get what they need. So you can build them a chair, get money for it, and then go buy food from someone who has food. So
that's a very great example. So the whole reason that we need currency, we are not trading a skill with a skill, is because maybe I have one skill and you have something that I want, and what you have that I want, but I have something that you don't want. So I say, can you give me yours? And you say, well, what would you give me in return? So for example, I say, let's say, I have pencil. For example, I have a pencil, and then I say, well, I need paper. And you say, well, I don't need pencil. I need, I don't know, whiteboard. And then, so I cannot trade with him. As he said, the example that he brought was a very good, very great example. Exactly. So we have to go find somebody that wants what we have. And so we could trade. So somebody has something that I want, and that person wants what I have to offer. So for that reason, you see a lot of basically disconnection over there. So for that, we make the currency, so the value of my work or whatever I have, we say this much, that much currency, the paper, I don't know, even napkin or something, whatever you got, 10 napkin. So we need 10 napkin. 10 napkin represent the pen that I have. I want to sell this one. Who wants that? I want food, somebody has food but doesn't need my pen. So I sell this pen to somebody that wants, and I get one, let's say napkin. Napkin is our currency. And I use that napkin and I give it to somebody who has food, so I could buy the food. So that's the whole purpose of the currency. Again, he's simplifying that so we could understand where we are going from, because the concept of the tariff is not that basically overcomplicated. When it comes to Federal Reserve bonds, treasury bonds, stock market, all of them, it gets way more complicated. But the tariffs in the basic level is very simple, and he's trying to bring those simple examples so we don't get confused by the definition of tariff by just saying, like, because some people just say others are ripping us off, and he brought those simple examples to show that why we are not ripped off.
Another kind of multiplier effect, like that lets you that facilitates trade. So you have this store of value now program, and so there's a few important differences here. So welfare, number one, governments don't have anything, so they can't give anything. You're arguing that someone giving you something for free makes you poorer. No, that is quite a pretzel to tie yourself into. Now, I've mentioned this before, and what people come back at me with is they'll be like, oh, but they...
So basically, we are saying everyone, pro-tariffs, Trump supporters are saying, well, look, we are getting ripped off by China. And they say, how are you ripped off? He says, well, because he's giving stuff cheap to us. The cheap labor, cheaper stuff is getting us out of the market. And then he refers, he's quoting somebody else that I don't remember the name. In the video, he says, according to that analogy, with that definition, he's ripping us off by giving us cheaper stuff. Then he's really ripping us off, like even he's hurting us more if he gives us that thing for free. So if giving us that service, that product for cheap is called ripping us off, then if he gives us that for free, it's even worse, right? But that's not the case. So he said you cannot make that argument that's just because he's giving us that cheap, so it means he's ripping us off. And he's saying, like, the reason is because we both agreed on, like, hey, I pay you, you give me good stuff. I pay you, you give me stuff. And he says he's giving us discount, even he's giving me cheaper. He said you never go, for example, if you go to the market and you say, how much is that yogurt? And that person says $10. And you give $10 to get one yogurt. And he says, you know what, just give me $8. You don't need to be worried about $10. So basically he gave you $2 cheaper. And you never come out of the supermarket and say, oh, that guy in the supermarket ripped me off because he gave me the yogurt $2 cheaper. So this is what China is doing to us. So as it's not possible, it doesn't make sense to call the guy who's selling the $10 yogurt $8 is ripping me off. As much as it doesn't make sense to say China is ripping us off because he's giving us everything cheaper. So now continue. So I have my take on that. I will talk later.
Welfare keeps people in poverty. So isn't that an example of giving someone something for free?
So he's saying some people counter argument is like, okay, welfare is giving us stuff free, but it's making the country poorer. So a counter argument to those people who says just getting cheaper stuff from China doesn't mean they are ripping us off. And he says, well, welfare is like government is paying them and government doesn't have anything by itself, and government is giving free stuff to those people who are on the welfare program by taxing people. So you are not making free, basically like a Robin Hood, you are getting from the rich and giving to the poor. Those people who make money, you tax them, punish them by taxing and get the money and giving to the poor people. So of course everybody gonna get poor people, because I haven't seen personally anybody by welfare has got motivation to do something. Basically it's addictive. It's making them, I pay you as much as you stay unemployed. So you are rewarding people for being unemployed, trade while you are punishing people who are hardworking and making money. So that's why the welfare program is very toxic, because you are punishing good behavior like working, and you are rewarding bad behavior like staying home and doing nothing and let others work for you and getting everything for free. So that's why he says you cannot use the example of welfare program on the China United States trade deficit. All right, let's see what he says.
Actually makes them poorer. And no, that is not a correct understanding of why. Listen, welfare is a government program, and so there's a few important differences here. So welfare, number one, is a fine. Okay. Now, what tariffs are is a tax on trade. Now, the issue you have here is that trade is not just a good thing, it's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. Now, you could argue which one of those is preferable, and I probably would say a tax on trade is better than a tax on working, but like they're both very related, as we just went over, right? This is the basics of economics. This is how prosperity happens, through work and through trade. And so to tax either of those, suggesting you want less of them, is just terrible economics. Just terrible. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show. Was that he was making an argument that we should eliminate the sun because they're putting the candle makers out of business or something like that. But if you're thinking about economics in the correct way, I think you'd recognize that someone charging you less or someone giving you something for free is not inherently them ripping you off. And it makes no sense to think about things like that.
This is exactly what I explained his words. Okay.
As I mentioned before, things do get more complicated when you're talking about one group of people with a government and another group of people with another government. Now, part of the reason why that is because, you can have a situation where we find ourselves where we are today. And so I've said this from the very beginning, okay? But I wanted to kind of lay out that groundwork. But this is why I've had this opinion on Donald Trump's tariffs that I have for a while. It is true that right now in our current situation, you have other countries who put tariffs on U.S. goods, meaning they tax their domestic population for trading with the United States of America. Now, this is bad for the same reasons that it's taxing goods, or when I say goods, positive things. Taxing positive things like labor or trade is inherently destructive. Okay, so that is true. It's bad that we do that. And one of the things that truly is appalling, from my perspective at least, is that you have many countries who the U.S. subsidizes. The U.S. subsidizes these countries, and then they turn around and they put tariffs on our goods. European countries, where we essentially pay for their defense. We give them Article 5 guaranteed protection under NATO, which, let's get real, Article 5 says that, like, if one NATO country is attacked, all of them have to join the effort to defend that country. But really, that's America will join the effort is what the real guarantee is there. Like, it's not like if England was attacked tomorrow, they're not like, thank God for NATO, because now Finland has our back. You know what I mean? They're saying thank God because the United States of America, the most powerful military in the history of the world.
So he's saying when it comes to this trade deficit, other countries are taking advantage of us. We do so many good things for them, and then our market or consumer or customers, American customers, we are buying their stuff, but in return for the trade, they are taxing us for trading with them. So basically, it's one way. So, and I think actually this is what Trump is doing. He's using the tariff as a leverage to say, hey, either I tax you on trade as much as you're taxing my goods on the trade, or we both drop that. Basically, like I do, or either we both drop our guns, or we keep shooting each other. But just you shooting me, it's not going to work anymore.
The world has their back. So we're guaranteeing protection for all these countries, and then they'll turn around and tariff our automobiles, make it harder for folk to picture here. So, as I've mentioned many times on the show before, and it's worth repeating, but so from, say, the end of the Civil War until 1913, okay, so it's like 1865 to 1913, it is hard for people to understand how much of an experiment in free market capitalist economics the United States of America was. It was the greatest experiment in free markets in human history, and it was also the time period when America became the richest, most powerful country in the world. Donald Trump is right about that, but it's not just like, oh, we had tariffs, therefore tariff policy good. Like, that's not the takeaway from it. In this time period, America had no income tax, no central bank. So we had sound money and no income taxes, okay? We also had no regulatory state, no welfare state. Federal spending was like 2% of the national income or something like that. I mean, it was the size and scope of the government was tiny. And yes, in this period, the way the government raised money was having some taxes on trade. Okay. Yes, it is true that was enormously preferable to what has followed after it, but Donald Trump is not recreating any of those conditions. I mean, I'm sorry, give me a break, but there may have been some talk at Doge about cutting $2 trillion in spending, which, by the way, is nothing in the grand scheme of things. You're talking about maybe bringing the talk of the drastic spending cuts, and by the way, I should look into the specifics of this because I'm not even sure it's this drastic. But if you were to cut $2 trillion out of the federal budget this year, like if you're not planning on doing this over 5 or 10 or 15 years, if you cut this year $2 trillion in the budget, you would be bringing the size of the U.S. federal government back to 2019 levels. 2019. That's how far back you'd be winding the clock. Not 1818, not 1918, 2019, okay?
So basically what Dave is saying, and actually he's right, he says that, well, listen, Trump is saying, oh, back in the day, going back to the golden era, and the golden era is from 1819 something till 1913, right before the World War I in 1917. He said that at that time we were experiencing the best experiencing the free market, the capitalism in the best way for the human history. But it wasn't only because we had the tariffs on the trade with on the global market with others. We didn't have any income tax for one, and also we didn't have Federal Reserve for two, and also the government spending was way lower. Like federal spending was 2% of the whole GDP, and right now and also we had the tax on the trade, right? But out of these 4 or even 5 factors that made those times golden era, golden ages, right now we are just putting the taxes on the trade. With the other countries, we are not doing anything else. So if you want to go back to that time, we have to consider other factors as well. Like, for example, like he says, like Doge is trying to do that, but if Doge is successful 100 in what they are anticipating, which is it's a big if with the capital, if they can be successful, even if they could, they are planning to cut the budget for what was that, for 200, I guess, for 2019. So it's not like we're gonna take it back 100 years. It's gonna take back what 6 years basically. So he's saying, well, nothing else is similar to that situation in that economy at that time. And all we are doing is just punishing people in America by just putting the tariff on the trade and make everything more expensive for the consumer, for the customers. That is all you're talking about. So he's saying if he really wants to take us back to the golden age, he has to do other stuff. Like the Doge is not enough. Like the cut is spending cut, taking us back to 2019 is just 6 years, not 100 years. We have to go back to 1930. And yeah, so there is no way that the federal spending going to go back shrinking down to 2% as it was in 1913. So in that case, so basically we are just hurting our economy. And the second thing is, for example, like we didn't have income tax. If Trump is successful, again, it's a big if, he can bring it down to the 15%. You know what I'm saying? So, but that time it was 0. So with all those factors, yeah, it's going to be crazy. We can have the argument. But other than that, only by just picking out like tax on tariffs on the trade, tax on the goods that are coming to us, with only that, we are not going to have golden era at that time. So if we are going to go back there, we have to make completely like that time.
So, like, this is the idea that Donald Trump has these tariffs going into effect in 3 days. We still have an income tax. We still have a Federal Reserve. We still have the biggest federal government in the history of the world. We're still going to be spending close to $7 trillion a year. We still have a giant regulatory state. None of the conditions of what he is talking about, where this tariff policy worked, are coming into effect. And this would almost be a reasonable claim if Donald Trump was somehow, of course, he can't do this through executive action, but if somehow he was announcing that we're abolishing income taxes, we're abolishing the Federal Reserve, we're going back on a gold standard, we're abolishing the welfare state, we're abolishing the regulatory state, but we're going to have these tariffs. Then what he's saying right here is a conversation to have. He's saying none of that. None of that. He's saying keep all that stuff we have, plus enormous taxes on trade on top of it. I'm sorry, this argument makes no fucking sense. This is just, he's completely wrong about this. All right, let's keep playing.
Likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use groceries. I use it in the
Like he just got a good policy out of a threat of a bad policy. So I'm not arguing that like there are things that are more complicated than just my, desert island, 101 economics example of trading between two people, But that's not what you're talking about here is basing your tariff policy off of a trade imbalance. Again, this is back to saying the supermarket's ripping me off because I spend all my money there and they don't spend any other money at my house. This is goofy economics. It doesn't make any sense at all. This is not reciprocal tariffs. It just doesn't make any sense. And I'll be honest, I mean, I don't know if this is going to get shut down or not, but I've been shocked so far that markets haven't been reacting more to this. I think it's almost that they're dumbfounded and they can't believe this is actually going to happen. But this is, whatever. We didn't talk about it on Rogan's podcast, so I thought I would do the episode on it today. But I got to say, this is just this is an indefensibly bad policy, and it really could be quite devastating. Talking about putting these huge tariffs. Look, the last thing I'll say about this, okay, is that I understand why people have nationalistic tendencies. I agree with a lot of those tendencies. I think that in the era of transnational corporations and globalist politicians, it is almost as if this lack of national cohesiveness, it's an attack on national cohesiveness and national unity, and that is something that I think people rightfully resist. I understand why people have this feeling that like the world is ripping us off and we want to do what's best for our country. I am an America First person. To the extent that we have a government, it ought to be servicing the American people who fund it. However, if you have something like some other country, let's just say, is producing steel, and they're producing it very affordably and very in large quantity. Now, it is true that might be bad for our steel plants here, because now you can get really cheap, really good steel from another country. It's way cheaper than it is buying it here. So that would be bad for our producers, but it would be great for the customers, right? Like it's good for the customers if they can get a better, cheaper good. And so you can just see where it's not just the national interest, and in fact, it might even be much more in the national interest that it puts those steel plants out of business, but all of the American people get their steel cheaper. It just in theory, like if that was the example. And the other final thing I'll say, and we could wrap up on this, is that when Donald Trump is talking about this era where there was no regulation, there was no taxes. I mean, I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying there's zero, strictly speaking, zero regulation or zero taxes, but like there was no income tax and the federal register, I mean, it was just nothing. Compared to today, it's statistically zero. It's essentially zero taxes and zero regulation. And there were tariffs. And he goes, oh, back then we had all this production here. We had a huge part of the rise of the tax overtaxing and over-regulation, like a rise in big government, and then what big government does is they overtax and over-regulate everything. That's also a huge part of what's made it impossible to produce here. And so if you really did have this national instinct, like if you want, because maybe you could make an argument that like, okay, Dave, your point about cheap steel, it makes sense in abstract economics, but in real life, if a war broke out, we can't be dependent on that country for steel because we got to be able to produce our own steel here. Like, okay, I could see in some sense there might be an argument to that. But then in that case, what Donald Trump should be doing here is attacking the regulatory state and the taxation. Make it much cheaper and much easier to produce here. And then we could build up our productive capacity and have the American consumer able to buy from all of these different, producers. So again, I just think this is backward and wrong, and it demonstrates a real lack of understanding of basic economics from the president and much of his base. Okay, I'm going to wrap up on that. Thank you guys very much for all the kind words on the internet, and thanks for listening.
All right, I'm gonna say what I believe, what I think. Well, look, there are a couple of points. First of all, thanks for David Smith for everything that he said, especially in the Joe Rogan's experience. Like, we voted for Trump for the peace, right, prosperity. And it has been almost 90 days, and we have seen none of that. Like, I know that President Trump cares about America. He loves America, and I really hope that he stops listening to his oligarch advisors and listen to 78 million people like us, middle-class people, that we voted for him to make America great again. Make America great leaderly. And I think some of the stuff, it doesn't look like that we are going toward that direction, especially with the conflict in the Middle East. And I'm really grateful for what they did, and always he does that. I mean, I wish we had more people like Dave to stand for American and not be puppet to the political party, both Republicans and Democrats today, that they don't have critical thinking. Although we conservative Republicans, they are way more detached from the party, from the establishment than Democrats. So there is more hope for us than them. But anyway, I'm going to just make a couple of points about what I believe about what he said, and in general, one of them is, well, he says that, like, listen, there is no way they are ripping us off by giving us something cheaper. Well, yeah, in the simple situation is oversimplified. Yes, it's always good to buy something cheaper, but you have to understand that we live based on working and producing goods, right? And just like a welfare, what China is doing to us is what our government is doing with the people who are on the welfare program. So basically, it's making you addicted to the cheap stuff, to free stuff. So eventually, you're going to lose the spirit to make something. So when we say make America great again, we are talking about the innovation, hard work, creating something new, designing, always prosperity, always going to the different level, right? But if we are getting always cheaper stuff from the China, eventually we're going to lose that American spirit that we get together and say, let's go, guys, let's make something. Like, for example, think about that. Right now, with those regulation, what companies are doing, they are finding the factories in China or India to create that over there and bring it in here. So basically, instead of we being the engineer, being the engine, the motor, the making, the machine that create things, we are turning to the fat consumer. We are just getting more addicted. Just like, how many people have you seen that have been on the welfare program for 5 years and they say, oh, with the money that I'm getting free from the government, I'm planning to invest on something, and eventually I get out of the welfare program with the money that I capitalize that so I start something. No. Everybody who is on welfare, you see that they have zero intention to get out of the program. That's why most of them, they vote for Democrats. And the reason is because they say, well, I can stay at home and get free money as long as Democrats are in the charge, because Democrats going to continue that by taxing the rich people, right? But if Republicans come and say, come on, roll up their sleeves, it's time to work, and they don't, that's why these people who are on the welfare program, they voted for Democrats, because nobody going to up and go to the work because they have lost their spirit. It doesn't mean they are lazy people. Government is making them lazy. It's exactly what China is doing to us. It's giving us cheaper stuff so we get used to it. So right now the innovation, look, just think about that. 50 years ago we sent the first man to the moon, and then what did we do? Just use a Hubble from the NASA, just take a couple of pictures from the black hole that looks like a donut, like blurry thing. That's the best thing that we could come up with after 50 years. Like, if right now, I told you, after the Cold War, after we sent the first man to the moon, and said we fast forward 50 years and say, what do you think gonna happen in 50 years? Probably people say, oh, we already have colonized the Mars and we left the galaxy, this galaxy. They would say, oh, not only we haven't done any of them, we even didn't send one more man to the moon. That's it. One man or woman, doesn't matter. Everybody at that time, we say, with this direction that we are going forward, we're going to have the cars, like a helicopter, like a cab driver, like an Uber, like driving on air, you know what I'm saying? Or people who could, read each other's mind, like something like a sci-fi movie. Like, does it look like a sci-fi movie where we are right now? We have just turned to a drug-addicted consumer. This is who we are right now. And it's only because of those cheaper stuff. Let me give you one other example. Go hard on yourself on gym, on treadmill, right? And see the result. Do you get older? Do you get weaker, or you get stronger? Now go easy on yourself. Don't run, don't do workout, don't anything. Go easy on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. And then you see the result is you are getting weaker and weaker. So those people who are working harder, they are getting stronger. Those people who are going easier, they are getting weaker. That's why those people that they are not going hard on themselves when they are young, going to the gym and being athletes, sooner they get fragile, sooner their body gets broken. Or those people who are hitting the iron, you see they are like 60, 70 and still they are standing tough. So the idea that we go softer on ourselves, we're going to last longer, is just wrong. It's against nature, right? It's against natural law, and it applies to our economic as well. Harder that we are on ourselves, we create stuff in here, easier it's gonna be. So yes, when you are hitting which one is easier? doing the dumbbell, like hitting the iron, using the dumbbell for weight, doing the weight, lifting the weight, or eating the burger? Which one is harder? Of course, this one is harder. Lifting the weight is harder than eating the burger. But in long term, in which one you're gonna build the muscle? Which one gonna make you stronger? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, blah, 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 blah. The same in here. You have to understand, like, we have to hit it, like this stock market crash, that these tariffs, that it looks like everything gonna be a little more expensive, is just like hitting the dumbbell. In order to be stronger, to compete, to have the vision for America's future, we need that level of hard work or a little of pain. Just like anything, no pain, no gain. If we want to gain America's golden age, we have to have pain. Without pain, we are not going to have gain. So far, we have been on drug, always getting cheaper stuff. Nobody works. Just we are not making anything. So how are we not going bankrupt? Printing money, printing money, printing money, inflation, printing money, inflation, printing money, inflation, printing money. Just look, if you think that kind of works, just look at Venezuela and Iran. Those countries that are keeping money to fight their inflation, to again cause more inflation, like just like a loophole, until they go bankrupt, they go on default. Same thing is happening in here. It's not like we are giving any good alternative. So eventually something should happen. And the other thing that they've said that I kind of like, I'm not 100% on the same page with him. He said like, well, in 1913, there were so many factors, not only tariffs on trade, right? So you are only putting tariffs on trade back to the system without eliminating other factors, right? That we have right now that we didn't have at that time, like Federal Reserve, like for example, income tax. We are not eliminating all of them. I totally understand. We cannot expect to get the same result as 1913, but it's time for United States that the economy was booming, the capitalism was doing great. I totally understand about that part. But listen, the thing is, I understand about that part, but the thing is, at some point we have to start something. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, at some point we have to do something. Like, we cannot just say, oh, either I'm going to do all of them or not. For example, if you want to lose weight, you say, oh, either I'm going to wake up in the morning and hit the gym and then run for 5 miles and then have the very healthy diet, or I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to even think about losing weight. You start slow. You start with, you know, like, I'm not going to eat past 9 p.m. And then I'm going to cut the sugar. And then maybe I'm going to cut them, for example, like carbs after 1 week. After 1 week, for example, I'm going to start on treadmill, just jogging, and then hit the gym, but with a light dumbbell. And just like that. I'm going to do something. In that case, what we are seeing, like, if we are waiting for the perfect time that we can eliminate everything or nothing, that time is never gonna come. But just like for losing weight, we have to go slowly today and tomorrow, do better step by step. Like, that was a good move actually. And the other thing that he was saying is just because of the security. You saw that because we were dependent on the China in the COVID, how they were ripping us off. So right now they are making us addicted to their business. So we cannot make it on our own. So whenever we need us, they can raise the price and then take everything that we have. It's called monopoly. I give you something when you are addicted, and in order to get what you are addicted to, I made you addicted to, I get everything. It's monopoly. Give me everything because you desperately need that. That is how manipulation in the market works. And in order to prevent this manipulation, this going bankrupt, we have to do something about that. That's all I'm saying. So we have to bring those jobs for security back, because let's say, God forbid, but let's say we are going to fight in China. We get semiconductor from the China, or Taiwan that is taken over by China to make the plane, to make a stuff that we could use it against China. You know what I'm saying? It's over. So in order to prevent that happening and also have more leverage, because for example, did you see that China was charging us way more just because it was the only producer in the COVID time and we didn't have any alternative options, so they charge us as much as they could. It shouldn't happen anymore. And the other thing is, we have to make America great again. People who should start to work, and of course it should be painful, it should be hurtful for them to create it outside so they could come inside. If right now you say to the people, why don't you bring your companies back, who's going to bring that? It's going to be so much hassle. They have to relocate, fire so many people, hire other people, and then deal with so many problems, and say, bro, I'm already good. I'm doing good. I don't want to move. In order to have the motivation for them to move is to invade the tariffs and tax. You cannot expect them, we go and then preach them, guys, you are better than that. Come back home. Bring the job home. Bring the great jobs for American people. You're better than that. Like, it's not like a church or something that we are preaching them. There should be punishment if they don't, so they would bring it. By talking, nobody would listen to us. That's how it works. So if you expect American companies, forget about foreign countries, American companies that they have their factories are located outside of America because of those other regulations, no matter how much you beg them, you cannot convince them to come back. Unless they know that they have to pay more if they make it outside. So I believe that was necessary. If we don't do that right now, we cannot do anymore, because also we are getting basically BRICS and other decentralized like currency, like cryptocurrencies, because of those cryptos and BRICS. We won't have the leverage from now on that we have right now. Right now, we don't have so many leverage that we used to have. But from now on, it's just going to go south. So it's not going to get better. So if you are wait until we have the full leverage, it's not going to happen. Today, we have more leverage than tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going to have more leverage than day after. From now on, just we're going to go south. People are going to get less dependent on us. So if we don't use those leverages right now, later it's going to be harder. So by waiting, nothing going to be solved. So sooner is better, because from now on, just country is going to be less dependent on us. So because of that, I'm saying basically sooner that we do, more leverage that we have, because we're just going to lose our leverages over the time because of decentralized and other countries that are finding the alternatives. But also there is one disadvantages it has. There is one side effect. I said about this, it is necessary, it is good, but also it has one side effect that nobody talks about. And the thing is, think about that. Right now, because they put tariffs on our goods, but we don't tariffs on their goods, it means we are buying from them, they are not buying from us that much because of those tariffs, right? Yeah, it is a good thing to make it fair, but also you have to remember, also we make the world addicted to our consumer, to our customers' basis, to our market. Because, for example, let's say France said, the amount of money that I am getting by trading with America, that they don't have tariffs on us, we have tariffs on them. In order to make it fair, make something, if I wanted to find alternative market for that, I had to make a deal with 10 other countries, and not all of them would come easy with us. So some of them, they would try to rip us off. Some of them, they would try to, like make a better deal. Like, it would be so much hassle. But instead of finding 10 other countries combined together would give me the benefit of America is giving, I am only trading with America. So there are kind of sorry, but so they are basically addicted to us, right? So now that they are addicted to us, what happens is they listen to us because they don't want to lose us. Let's say one country, 50% of their trade is with us. And then, so they need us, they need our currency, they need our dollar, they need everything. So they're dependent on us, they're addicted to us. But if the tables turn and they say, well, if you are giving me the same offer as other countries are giving, why should I look up to you? Why should I care about you? Why should I be dependent on you? I go try other countries. The reason that they chose us over other countries is because we were giving them better offer than other countries combined. We didn't have tariffs on their products, but they have tariffs on us, right? So they were saying like, America is better business for me, business partner than others. I can get better deal with them. But if they cannot get that better deal with them, there is no obligation for them to stay with us. They would try alternatives. So we are gaining something, but also we are burning our car. You hear me? So what we are getting is more companies coming in here, more money, revenue from the tax, from the tariffs that we are getting from others. So good, good, good. But also the side effect is now they will see no advantages of working with us, trading with us over other countries. So eventually it says, why am I trading with America, other side of the world? I can find better deal. So they try to go look for other markets. So we won't have that leverage anymore. So I hope that President Trump already put that in consideration, the leverage that we had because they were addicted to our dollar, to our market, to our customers, to our consumers. So because of that, they would just listen to us whatever we did. If we said that make it fair, it says if my trade with you is exactly the same as my trade with any other countries, so there is no obligation for me to stay with you if everything goes south. So then we lose our power like an empire, we lose our influence on the world, but also we get richer. So for that reason, I'm saying we should be careful. We should be careful and see what happens. So I hope you like that. I mean, if you like it, you can subscribe, comment, and then I would like to know your opinion about that. And like always, as above, so below.